Okay, welcome everyone to the final event of the Workplace Wellness Series, where we'll be discussing Mindset Matters. So my name is Anna Valegia. I am the Director of Career Services for the NC State Alumni Association. So on behalf of the Alumni Association, we want to thank our members and welcome everyone joining live or watching the recording. So in my role, I have the honor of working directly with alumni on various professional development topics, and workplace wellness is more important than ever. So we are thrilled to be partnering with Wellness and Recreation. So just as a reminder, this event is being recorded and you'll receive a copy of the event and the slides that we'll be discussing today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our wellness expert and presenter, Katie Belusa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Anna. So happy to be here. I see a couple familiar faces, which is always nice to see. But my name is Katie Belusa. I'm the coordinator of wellness programs for Wellness and Recreation. Really excited to be here with you all today to talk about something that I'm really passionate about, and that is mindset. And, when we talk about wellness, we always hit on things like nutrition. We talk about moving our body, we talk about sleep, right? But sometimes we don't put enough attention and focus on our emotional well-being. And a lot of our emotional well-being is tied into our mindset. So today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about why our mindset does matter and how it impacts our overall well-being, both in and out of the workplace. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Just give me a thumbs up when you can see it. Perfect. So like I said, welcome to Mindset Matters. And today we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but one of those things is perspective. And I kind of like this photo because it's a different perspective than we're used to seeing the bell tower, right? And it's a really beautiful shot, but it just goes to show you that when we change our perspective, we can see things in a different way. So before we dive right in, just a quick Zoom guide and some ground rules. You've probably seen this before, but if you're not speaking, just keep that microphone muted. We never know if somebody's dog will start barking or their child will start crying, right? Things happen where a lot of us are at home. So, just keep that microphone muted. If you do have questions or want to contribute, I'm going to pose questions throughout the session. If you don't feel like unmuting or raising your hand to kind of talk about it, feel free to use that chat feature. You can also use that chat box if you do have questions along the way that I will try to answer as we go through or at the end. And just be fully present, respect the floor and whoever is speaking, allow others to engage. We always like to say, don't yuck someone's yum. So if somebody shares something that maybe doesn't really work for you, that's okay. We're all different. And then of course the Vegas rule. So what people say on this call or discuss on this call, if it's private, it stays on this call. But of course, we would love for you to share out this information to your friends and family as well. So I always like to start with a quote to kind of get us in the right mindset, right? To talk about our topic of the day. And so a great quote from Arthur Ashe, tennis legend: start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. This is kind of sums up, I think, some of the session in a nutshell, but, we all want to maybe be somewhere else. Maybe we're not quite where we thought we would be, or we have more aspirations and goals and dreams, and that's good. But just remember to start where you are and use what you have and do what you can in that moment. So much about what we're talking about today in mindset really is about looking at what you already have and what you can already do, and not so much looking elsewhere, right? Looking within as well. And so when we talk about mindset, we really talk about two different mindsets. One is a fixed mindset and one is a growth mindset. You might be familiar with these terms already, but really what we're trying to do is shift. Most people tend to be in more of a fixed mindset. And so in a fixed mindset, people believe that basic abilities, so it might be intelligence, specific talents or skills or traits, they're fixed traits. They either have them or they don't. They have a certain amount of it and that's it. Then, the goal, so it says they have a certain amount, that's that. And then their goal becomes to look smart all the time and never look dumb. This is what Carol Dweck, who's really the mother of mindset shift says. So, but in a growth mindset, people understand that talents, abilities, and other things can be developed through effort, good teaching, persistence, determination. People who have a growth mindset, again, don't think everyone is Einstein, right? But people in a growth mindset understand that, if I want to be, quote, smarter, I can be. So really in a fixed mindset, we believe I either have it or I don't. We're in a growth mindset. We say, I might not have it, but that's okay because I can get it. Or even maybe that's not meant for me, but I'm good at other things, right? So here's a quick video that I'm going to share about mindsets that really sums it up well.
Researcher and professor Carol Dweck uses the term mindset to describe the way people think about ability and talent. Dweck delineates between two different mindsets that exist on a continuum. The first is the fixed mindset, which suggests that your abilities are innate and unchangeable. The second is a growth mindset, which views it as something you can improve through practice. In a fixed mindset, you view failure as permanent, but with a growth mindset, you see failure as a chance to learn and even pivot. Those with a fixed mindset are more likely to view critical feedback as a personal attack, while those with a growth mindset will see it as a chance to improve, where they can develop new systems. With a fixed mindset, you're more likely to choose easier tasks and put in minimal effort. After all, if talent is fixed, why bother improving? Why even try? But with a growth mindset, you're more likely to embrace challenging tasks and work hard to improve. Those with a fixed mindset are likely to give up when they face an obstacle. Meanwhile, those with a growth mindset will view obstacles as a chance to experiment and solve problems. In a fixed mindset, the focus is on measurable accomplishments. But with a growth mindset, the focus is more on a journey of continual improvement. With a fixed mindset, you're less likely to take creative risks. But with a growth mindset, creative risks are simply a way to innovate and improve. Ultimately, your mindset influences everything from creative risk-taking to how you view feedback to whether or not you finish difficult tasks. And in the end, it's one of the greatest factors in determining whether or not you grow and improve in your abilities.
So, looks like we're back to my screen. Perfect. Can everyone see my screen okay? Still? Great. I love that music too. I think it's sweet. So that sums up a growth mindset really, really well, right? And compares a lot of, in a fixed mindset, we think this, in a growth mindset, we think this, but overall, a growth mindset really helps us to be our best self. It's not just about being positive all the time. I hear that from people like, I can't always be positive. And that's true. Sometimes you just can't, right? Sometimes things are not fun and that's okay. But a growth mindset looks at obstacles as opportunities. It doesn't necessarily say this isn't an obstacle, but it does help us to recognize that although this might be challenging, there is an opportunity to grow and learn here. And so feel free to, unmute yourself and share, or drop in the chat if you'd like. How has your mindset shifted over the last year? It could be in a positive way, could be in a negative way. If you're like me, you might have gone back and forth between fixed and growth mindset. So kind of let me know how has your mindset shifted at all over the last year or so?
Hi, this is Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, I'm going to start my video so you guys can all see my lovely Chicago background.
Wow.
Yes, the river is green in Chicago. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So I think this last year has been a wonderful growing experience. I know one of the things I had to do with this year was just approach things differently, open up my mind, and just look at things differently. I had several discussions with my son about that, how I think we just need to start thinking differently. In a lot of different ways. There were opportunities this last year. There were pleasant surprise. There was also a lot of hardship too. So not, just kind of not wanting to miss the the good things that happened too, and the opportunities that came across also, but also there was a sad side too. So I think it's been a good year to pause and reevaluate, so I've heard a lot of people doing that. So I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Kim. Yeah, I think that's something I've heard a lot too. And this is the thing about our mindset. We don't have to pretend that the last year has been totally good, right? It's okay to say the last year totally sucked. And it's okay to also recognize that there's a collective trauma experienced by the world over the last year. And there are certain folks who experienced a lot of hardship over the last year for many, many reasons, right? Not just a pandemic, but many intersectional factors on top of that. So in a growth mindset, it allows us to still recognize that there was hardship, but there was turmoil, and there was struggle, but it also helps us to view a really hard situation as something where, maybe there are silver linings, or maybe there are lessons to learn, or things we can. I like to tell my students, you grow through what you go through. So thanks for sharing that, Kim. And I see Reggie has put in the chat that they've become more comfortable knowing that life really is simple. It doesn't take much to be happy and content. And yeah, that's another great example of a mindset shift, where sometimes when we do experience a collective trauma, it does help us to reframe what's really important, right? And that life really has a lot of simple pieces. Life can be really complicated, but it can also be really simple. And, it maybe doesn't take much for us to truly be happy and content. I know for myself, I've been up and down, but I've landed in a place where I practice gratitude more regularly. I am grateful for the smaller, simple things in my life. I'm grateful for things like a roof over my head. I'm grateful that I have a job. I'm grateful that I have a support system. I'm grateful that I get to eat 3 meals a day, right? Those are things that I think we often take for granted. How often do we stop and pause when we go to turn on our faucet in our kitchen sink and think, how amazing is that we have clean running water right to our home? But a lot of places in the world do not have that, right? And a lot of places in our country right now still don't have clean water. So little things like that, I know for me, I have experienced quite a shift. And I see Alyssa says that she agrees in the appreciation of simplicity and calmness. Take a boring year or two, right? Her perception of permanence has certainly shifted. Yeah, the permanence or lack thereof of everything we see, experience, and live. Absolutely, right? And nothing's guaranteed too, right? Things are fleeting, so things are changeable. So absolutely. Does anyone else want to share anything else? Or even if you just take a moment to think for yourself and really reflect, how has my mindset shifted? And it's okay if you feel like my mindset kind of went through the ringer over the last year. If you experienced some ups and downs, if you did struggle and it was hard to see the positives, that's okay too. That absolutely happens for sure. Anyone else like to share before we move on? Marissa says, as an event planner for a nonprofit, had to reimagine everything about my job over the past year. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Autopilot mindset, says Wendy. Yep, absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in that. You don't have to raise your hand, but I'm sure quite a few of us on this call have had things change like that at the workplace. I obviously work for NC State. I work for Wellness and Recreation. We opened a brand new 40,000 square foot facility in October, midst of a pandemic. And that was quite a challenge, and things were every single day changing, and it can be exhausting, right? Reimagine everything. If you're like me, I'm a planner. I'm used to having everything planned a semester in advance, a year in advance, sometimes at work. And now I'm planning things a month out, sometimes day of, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right? It can be stressful, it can be overwhelming. And eventually we can also get in that autopilot mindset for sure. And which is really in a lot of ways a survival instinct, right? We do it to kind of protect ourselves for sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a year, hasn't it, folks? It's been a couple years even. There's just a lot of things going on, right? So, and let's see, Tina says, a single mom, lost job, just trying to figure out what to do and how to be positive while trying to find a new job. Yeah, it's discouraging with trying to keep a great mindset. Absolutely, Tina. That brings up a great point too. And again, it's sometimes things are just really hard. And like I like to say, it's okay to sit in the suck sometimes, but our mindset really can have a positive influence on us. And having that hope that of things working out. If you're somebody who worries in advance about something that hasn't happened yet, I'll challenge you to say, don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet. Because if it, already it happens, you put yourself through it twice, right? Or worrying about things that might not happen. We just don't know. And so trying to keep that positive mindset, it is a challenge for sure. And I'm not here to tell you like everything's great. I'm not about toxic positivity at all. I am about being real. So hopefully some of the things we talk about today can help everybody. So thanks everyone for sharing. Always love when folks share. And so talking about limiting mindsets, and these are just a few examples, but you can think of those for yourself as well. So I'm not good with numbers. I still say this all the time. I'm a public health, professional. I'm good with people. I'm good with public speaking, but I'm not really good with numbers. I regularly still say that. I'm not a good public speaker. I hear folks say that a lot too. I'm not creative. I'm a procrastinator. I've never been good at blank. I've never been good at, running. I've never been good at, any kind of like skill. I've never been good at Excel sheets, right? It's really easy to find ourselves thinking of or finding ourselves in these mindsets that we're not good at something, or we're not, for me, I'll say I'm not good with numbers, and I'll be like, well, that's just how I am, right? And there might be some truth in that some folks might be more inclined to like data, and I'm definitely more inclined to enjoy more interpersonal interactions and relationships with folks, but it doesn't mean I'm not good with numbers, right? I can certainly grow. I have a master's degree. I had to take biostatistics, so I must be okay with numbers, right? But we so easily get caught up in these, they're almost like negative identities. And so for a long time, I associated with myself with not being good at math, and it might have held me back. And so, I want you all to just think of a few things that where are your fixed mindsets? Is it, whether you can think about it in your workplace setting. I'm not organized. I'm not good at answering my email. I don't get things done. I'm not good at delegating, or even your personal life. Like, it really could be anything. And so we're just going to take a few of these fixed mindsets, and I want us to kind of change it into a growth mindset. So I'm not good with numbers. I'm a procrastinator, and I've never been good at sewing, knitting, I don't know, right? Something. But we can shift that exact mindset. So we'll take, I'm not good with numbers, to I'm figuring out my learning style so I can feel more confident with numbers. Or for me, I'll say, you know what? I'm not bad with numbers. I might not be the best, but that's okay. I'm good at a lot of other things too, right? I'm a procrastinator. Instead, we can approach that as I haven't figured out a time management strategy that works for me yet, because there's something out there for everybody. You just might not, fall in that bucket that works for most people. Most people can do X, Y, and Z. You might not be wired that way, and that's okay. So you can find a strategy that works for you. And then I've never been good at something, change it to I'm working on. I'm improving, I'm putting in the effort, I'm getting better at, right? Instead of just putting ourselves, because, if I say I'm a procrastinator, that's it. It becomes part of my identity, and then I don't do anything about it. Or I just say there's nothing I can do. This is just the way that I am, when that's not true. So just want you all to kind of think through. You don't have to share if you don't want to. This can just be in your head kind of thing, but where are you finding yourself in a fixed mindset? And you might have to take some actual time to think about this, because, we'll talk about negative self-talk shortly, but we're so conditioned to talk negatively to ourselves that these fixed mindsets are everywhere in our life. And sometimes we need to pause and reflect about them. So just something I want everyone to be aware of here. And so these are just a few things you can ask yourself to, just some of the bigger areas we see fixed mindsets. One is, are you opposed to receiving constructive criticism? That is a big one. A lot of folks really struggle with receiving feedback. I used to be this person, so I can totally understand. But that's usually an indicator of a fixed mindset. Because if my supervisor tells me, Katie, you really need to work on so-and-so, I'll say, oh, really? I get offended. Like, I'm not good at that. Okay. And I'll be like, what's the point of trying? Right. Instead, if I have a open growth mindset, I'll say, dang, I'm really lucky that my supervisor cares enough about me to give me feedback. It's actually going to help me grow and be my best self. Right. Of course, there are ways to give and receive feedback. Some are not always the most helpful, but if you're someone who really struggles to receive feedback and it feels like a personal attack on you, maybe pause and kind of reflect on that. Another one is, are you scared to challenge yourself, or do you avoid challenges? Do you avoid doing things that you might not necessarily be good at right away? Sometimes we tend to go where we're comfortable, not challenge ourselves. Sometimes that fear of failure, that is a fixed mindset. And so are there areas of your life where you're kind of coasting, that you are not challenging yourself, you're not taking a risk? Maybe I talk with some of my colleagues about this, who, like, I've been in the same job for 7 years because I'm scared to challenge myself. That's what I hear, right? So where do you stand? Whether it's in the workplace or it's at home, do you also find yourself giving up easily? So you try something new, it fails right from the start. Do we give up, or do we try something new? Do we, in a fixed mindset, we say it didn't work, so I'm not going to try. In a growth mindset, we say it didn't work, so I'm going to try again. I'm going to try something different. You can think of, there are 1.5 million examples of successful folks who, if they had given up. Apple, right? That's a perfect example. Apple was started in somebody's garage in California. I think Amazon was too, right? These are two of the biggest, most powerful companies that were told no. Even just the other day, I was watching a president of a famous makeup brand called It Cosmetics. Their CEO was told no by every major brand. They're like, what are you doing? Give up, stop. And she just knew, she said she knew in her heart that she had something here. Now they're a multi-million-dollar company, right? So do you find yourself giving up, or do you find yourself being open to a challenge? And then, does the success of others intimidate you? This one could be a little bit tricky because it can be a little bit harder to see. But when you see somebody else who's, driven, who's succeeding, who's going for it, who's not afraid to fail, do you feel intimidated by that, or do you feel inspired, right? So these are just a few of the questions to ask yourself to kind of start being more aware of where your mindset could maybe use a shift. And this won't happen overnight. This is something that you have to consistently do, consistently challenge yourself, consistently catch yourself and check yourself as well. Anyone have any questions so far? All right. So we're going to move on to talk about self-talk. And this is one of my favorite things to talk about. But what is self-talk? So Self-talk is really just what we say to ourselves, the thoughts that we have in our mind. They are constantly going, right? And negative self-talk can be really problematic, but unfortunately it's really common. And then these are just 4 of the big negative self-talk themes that we see. One is personalizing. So blaming yourself for everything. Something doesn't go right, your initial reaction is to blame yourself. Another one is magnifying. So focusing on the negative, but ignoring the positive. So if something happens, there's good and bad, but we're only focusing on the negative. Catastrophizing, so expect the worst without logic. And this one can be tricky too, because if we're catastrophizing so often, it can also be an indicator of an anxiety disorder or another mental health issue. Very common, people who suffer from anxiety, it's very easy to get wrapped up in this catastrophe thinking, this line of thinking, expecting the worst. So I will just pause there and say, if you experience this often and it's getting to the point where it's hurting your life, definitely talk to your physician or a counselor, because that can definitely be an indicator of something more serious than just negative self-talk. And then 4th, we have polarizing. So you see the world in black and white. It's either good or it's bad. There's no gray area. There's no seeing both sides of the story. It's either this or it's not. These are just 4 of the big ones. And so negative self-talk can actually really hurt us. So when we talk negatively to ourselves, it increases our stress. It's also, we can experience feelings associated with depression. Folks who do suffer from depression are oftentimes do experience negative self-talk, and being aware of the way we speak to ourselves, both, internally and out loud, can absolutely impact the way we feel. Negative self-talk also limits our thinking. It puts us in a fixed mindset, right? If something goes wrong and you immediately blame yourself, or you say, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm a failure, of course, it's going to put you in a fixed mindset. Also linked to low self-esteem, folks who talk negatively to themselves. There's a lot of research indicating that is very closely correlated to our self-esteem levels. So, also when we're negative self-talking regularly, we're not going to achieve what we can. We are holding ourselves back, right? And then also there's that self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you say, I'm never going to amount to anything, self-fulfilling prophecy says you might not, right? We have this tendency to do that. And so when we're thinking, I want you to just pause and think about, how do you talk to yourself? What are your initial thoughts? I always ask people, who's your best friend in the world? Just think about them for a second. Just envision that person. Is it yourself? Did you think of yourself? Probably not. But I do. And I can tell you that it took some time to get there. But I always say to folks, the world is hard enough on you. Why be hard on yourself too? Leave that up to other people. Other people might be tough on you. The world might throw things at you. But especially when you're feeling down, why would you come after yourself? Doesn't make sense if we think about it that way, right? See in the chat, how do you balance holding yourself accountable without slipping into negative self-talk? Yeah, it's easy. It takes practice. It's easy to do that. It absolutely takes practice. And we'll talk about that a little bit now. I see Kimberly says, give yourself some grace that you give others. Absolutely. I always tell folks, treat yourself as well as you treat others. That is one of the hardest, it's the simplest thing and the hardest thing at the same time, right? So how do we create positive self-talk? One is to identify the negative self-talk trap. So there might be certain situations that you find yourself more likely to experience negative self-talk. You also might find that there are certain people who bring that out in you. You might find, whether it's a scenario, maybe it's something at work that, a project that you're struggling with, and that consistently brings it out. Maybe it's associated, something I often see is folks, and I do wellness coaching for the university. I often see folks at the gym who say that they look at the people around them and don't feel like they're good enough, and they're weak, or they're, whatever it might be. And so being able to recognize the situations and the context of when you experience most of your negative self-talk is really important, because you can't fix it until you start recognizing it, right? And so every time you have a thought, it will take practice, and it at first it might feel a little bit funny, but I promise you that if you are consistent with it and always checking in with yourself, you'll begin to put the pieces together and you'll be able to see it. And so another way is to practice positive affirmations. You can do this a lot of different ways. Some folks like to just, in the morning when they wake up, look in the mirror and say things to themselves. Do I do that? Yeah, I do. People laugh, but I swear it works. Pump yourself up, right? I don't know about you all, but I love positive affirmations. Words of affirmations is my love language. And so why wouldn't I give myself affirmations, right? Another thing you can do with positive affirmations, besides making it a consistent part of your schedule, is when you catch yourself saying something negative about yourself or thinking negative about yourself, say 2 positive things to make up for it, to make it a wash, right? So I will share that, I am a supervisor to many student employees here at Wellness and Recreation. And in my office, I don't get to see them in person like I used to, but we had a rule that if you said something bad about yourself, we would joke when we say, 2 put-ups, because right, we have put downs and put-ups. Can you tell I used to work with elementary school children? But I would really make them pause, and they started calling each other out. And so we created this culture of positive self-talk, not allowing each other to talk negatively about ourselves. And I share this because at the end of the day, there's only one person in the universe that you can always count on, and it's yourself. You might say, well, I have my spouse and I have my children, I have my friends, and absolutely they support you. And oftentimes you can count on them, but you can never control another person. You can only control yourself. And so through all the things in the world, be your own ride or die, be your own loyal person. Because at the end of the day, you're the only one you can control. And so doesn't make sense to be hard on ourselves, right? Also want y'all to check in with your feelings. Next, if you find yourself, in that negative self-talk trap, check in with yourself. How are you feeling? Maybe you're not feeling so great. Maybe you're having a bad day. Check in with your needs too. Maybe you haven't had enough water today, or you haven't eaten enough, or you haven't moved your body, right? In a way that works for you. Like maybe you haven't taken a minute for yourself. Right? I don't know about y'all, but oftentimes I have back-to-back Zooms. I'm fatigued. And so taking those moments to check in with yourself too, and say, oh, dang, maybe I do need to take a 5-minute break. Maybe I do need to schedule my Zoom meetings to be 55 minutes to allow myself 5 minutes between, right? Highly recommend that. Also finding the humor. So kind of like what I share with my students, where we make jokes about it and we're like, oh, you better say 2 nice things about yourself, right? It's also good to find the humor, anytime we're working on self-improvement and bettering ourselves, changing our mindset, it's okay to laugh sometimes, especially for me when I started really digging into this work. I would just be like, oh my gosh, why would I even think that about myself? And almost like laugh it off, right? Don't be so serious about this work. Find the humor in the daily, and then communicate when you feel down. So communicate with yourself and communicate with others close to you. It's okay if you're not feeling your best. But your loved ones can't read your mind as much as we would love them to, right? At the end of the day, it's your responsibility to communicate how you feel and what you need. So making sure that if you are having, experiencing you're feeling down, you're feeling the negative self-talk building up, making sure you communicate to others, hey, I'm kind of feeling down, just to make sure, that the expectations are fair across the board. And a different perspective can really, really help us. And so what can a different perspective do, you might ask? Well, looking into the future can definitely help us determine the true importance of a stressful event. Let's think about, the last maybe stressful event you might have experienced. I mean, this is a workplace wellness series, so let's think about the last time something at work really stressed you out. Whatever it might be, I like to do this with myself. I'll do this with my staff. I'll do this with my coworkers. I'll say, this time next year, will this matter? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, right? You know, a really good activity to do with yourself too. And I've experienced this in counseling as well. I'm always team counseling. Take care of your mental health. Get a counselor if you can. Quick plug for that. But my therapist would ask me, in 5 years from now, will this matter? Almost every time it won't. Almost every time. There's some things, yeah. But think about the last work project, or you sent something wrong in an email, or something happened at work. Look into the future and ask yourself, will this long-term affect my life? This is what I tell my students when they're crying, they failed a test. I say, in 5 years from now, will you remember this? Sometimes they're like, yeah. I tell them, trust me, I failed tests in college too. And I don't remember, I just remember that it happened. And guess what? Here I am. I'm your supervisor and I have a master's degree, right? So kind of apply that same principle to, does this actually matter in the long run? Is it worth it to get very worked up right now and very upset if down the road, this might not actually impact my life too much? But also a different perspective can help us reframe just difficult situations. So, something happens, it's okay to understand that this is icky. I didn't like this. This is painful. This is hurting me. But we can also reframe situations to find the positives sometimes, and also seeing obstacles as opportunities. Every obstacle might not be an opportunity, but most obstacles do present opportunities, whether it's to grow or to learn. Maybe you didn't get that job promotion that you really thought you were going to get. That might feel like an obstacle, but instead, maybe that's opening a different door for you, right? So often we see obstacles as this thing in the way that I have to obliterate. But realistically, maybe that's an opportunity. Let's see, Rachel says, how do you hold on to that realistic perspective if the work culture is prone to pointing fingers? At the end of the day too, you have to ask yourself, if they're prone to pointing fingers, will it still impact your life long term? I think so often we let our workplace control our well-being. Like, I'm very fortunate. I love where I work, but it is very fast-paced, very, very fast-paced. It is quick. And if you're not careful and taking care of yourself, it can run you down. So I have to learn to relinquish control of things in my workplace. I can't control if people are going to blame me for things that aren't my fault. I can't control that. I can't control if somebody doesn't like me, right? I really can't. And so a lot of our anxiety is related to our workplace, and, come from, we want to control things and we just can't control a lot. And so just doing what you feel like you can do. And if your workplace culture is toxic, that might be your sign that it's time to look for something new, right? Because at the end of the day, is it impacting your well-being in a negative way? I say, if your job is causing you so much stress that you're not sleeping well, you're not eating right, you're doing work at 10 o'clock at night, then it might be time to hold yourself accountable and say, what can I do to relinquish the control here and focus on just me and my perspective? Or then maybe I see these obstacles become opportunities for something new for me, right? Also, a different perspective can help you be patient with others. So often we assume the worst. It's kind of a really not so cute trait of humans, is that we oftentimes assume the worst. Somebody didn't respond to my email. Like, wow, they're just disrespectful. When instead it's, maybe they're out of office and they're so stressed they forgot to put them out of office. Maybe there's something going on. We're all fighting battles that the others can't see, right? And so just being a different perspective can help us to be patient. I always like to tell folks, just assume that everybody just had the worst day of their life, and you'll never get mad at anyone. Just because you really don't know, they might have, right? they really might have. Realistically, it's probably they didn't, but it's a really good rule of thumb, especially if somebody is stressing you out. Let's just assume as an exercise that they just had the worst day of their life. Yeah, as Alyssa says, give people the benefit of the doubt, truly. And guess what? You might give folks the benefit of the doubt 5, 6 times, and then it's okay to get to a point where like, maybe I don't go to this person anymore because they're not giving me what I need, right? But at the end of the day, there have been times where you've messed up and someone was annoyed with you, but maybe you had a lot going on and it was hard, right? So just really trying to be compassionate and empathetic to others. The world, again, is tough right now. So be patient with others, be patient with yourself. And a different perspective can also help us to not sweat the small stuff. Kind of what I said about like looking into the future. It is, there's a lot of stuff that we get upset about, we worry about, we stress about. Then in the grand scheme of life is very small. I remember when I first started working professionally, this is years ago, when I lived in Boston, and I was so stressed out because my boss called me because one of my students was on their cell phone during a shift, and I was just like panic. I was like, oh my gosh, this looks so bad on me. What do I do? Really? Katie nowadays would be like, all right, well, it is what it is. Like, this is not impacting my life. That was not worth causing my stress. And a different perspective can help us to feel gratitude, right? That gratitude for the small things, the gratitude for the roof over the head and the hot meal and the running tap water. It could be the gratitude, next time you're sitting in traffic and you're annoyed. How about the gratitude that you have a car, right? Those of you have ever not had a car, you know the struggle, right? The public bus, you only have so much freedom, right? And so little things like that. Carla says a toxic workplace gave me the motivation I needed to go back to school and pursue a new career. It was a scary move. My family and I were suffering the stress of the toxic environment. I'm so glad I made the change. Carla, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a perfect example of a growth mindset. It was scary. It was a risk, right? There was fear, but you knew that if I stayed, it was negatively impacting me. It was negatively impacting my family. And so often we think that our job is the only job because we're comfortable and because we're afraid, right? But know that there are always opportunities. And so Carla, that's awesome. Love that. Makes my heart flutter with joy. So congratulations on that. You're going to motivate some other folks, I think, as well. What's happening here? Oh, here we go. How will you continue? So this is, you can share if you want, you can just reflect. How will you continue to cultivate your growth mindset? What is that going to look like for you? Maybe during this session when you were reflecting, you said, oof, I'm really not in a growth mindset. I have a pretty fixed mindset with a lot of things, or I'm maybe not so kind and compassionate to myself. So how do you plan to cultivate that? And if you're someone who tends to, do a pretty good job at a growth mindset, nobody's in it all the time. If you are, come talk to me because I need some advice, because it's really hard to always be thinking that way, but just want folks to just be mindful and think through what can you do? What will you do? Kimberly says by asking questions. Yeah. So asking questions to yourself and to others. Absolutely. Be a curious learner about yourself. Really, this is one of the best things you can do is be a curious learner about yourself. I think we so often assume that we know everything about ourselves. There's a lot that you don't know. And people in a growth mindset tend to be curious learners about themselves. So I encourage you, and Reggie says, be a lifelong learner. Be interested in learning about the world around us, but be also interested in learning about yourself. Don't be afraid to dig deep and explore. Alyssa says actively practicing it and talking about it with your children. Yay, we love that. Every day, it feels like there's a way to help my children reframe things in their lives, which gives me practice doing it also. Alyssa, thank you for bringing that up because that's a great point too. And I bet a lot of parents do this and you don't even realize it. Those of you who've ever had small children, know that you could give your child the wrong color cup and it can become a meltdown, right? And so you might be reframing that, or, to your children on a daily basis. You don't even realize you're doing it. So, and talking, if you have children, this is a great thing to talk about with your children now. Create a healthy relationship with your child, to have a healthy relationship with themselves. If you ever hear a loved one, a child, anybody say anything bad about themselves, call them out. That's what I do. I'll say, hey, 2 put-ups, right? Whatever you want to do. Rachel says, schedule time every day to learn and read about something new. That's wonderful. Also, there's so much. We're so lucky. We're in an age of technology where we can learn anything. For me, I'm a curious learner about the world. Anytime I have a question, I Google it. My friends, they tease me, but I say, why wouldn't I? What a joy that this thing answers all my questions, right? That's something we don't want to take for granted too. Kimberly, we all have scripts you follow, but you have to ask, are these scripts helpful? Absolutely. Yep. It's so much of this work. It's hard work, but it's self accountability. It's personal accountability. And again, knowing that you are capable of holding yourself accountable is the first step. You are capable. If you want some help doing it, and you're a member of Wellness and Recreation, you can work with me as a private health coaching client, and I can help you with that. I'll include that in the email too. But yeah, it's a lot of this it's on us, right? We are able to make these changes. If you have a significant other or partner, you have children, you have, friends that are close, I encourage you to bring them in on this with you, right? Social support is important. Tell your best friend, hey, if I ever say anything bad about myself, call me out on it. And I'm going to do the same for you. Alex says, accept that as I grow, I will want new things. Changing my goals is not failure. It's a breakthrough. Yes, I love this. I feel like this is becoming a Brene Brown talk, and I love it. It's so true. Growing, it's when we grow, we change, and it's okay, right? Brene, if you're not familiar with Brene Brown, you should read all her books. She's magical. But she says that she's all about being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable to connect. And that also includes with yourself, being vulnerable to experience true connection. And it takes courage and it takes strength to be vulnerable and to look inward at yourself. So Alex, I really love that one too. It's okay if your goals change. You're changing, right? And it's absolutely a breakthrough. And this work, like I said, this work is hard work, but it's really, really important. And so kind of along those lines, I just like to get folks kind of thinking through, because this session is less do this, right? It is more, this is more nuanced and more subjective. But what's something that you are going to take away from this session? Right. For me, I do these talks all the time, but this was still a good reminder, even for myself, to continue to be my own best friend and continue to treat myself right. And even from a health and well-being standpoint, when I'm not feeling really motivated to exercise, or when I don't feel like cooking a healthy meal, I don't feel like cooking, I don't guilt myself about it. But what I do is I'm like, I deserve to be healthy. I deserve to be well. I deserve to feel energized, and I deserve to take care of myself. And so Kimberly says Brene Brown's TED Talks are good. Yep. She also has a Netflix special that's phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend. She has a podcast too. We love Brene. Rachel says they learn to cut themselves some slack, but don't stop pushing and holding myself accountable. Yeah, absolutely. It's a balance, right? You gotta, sometimes am I too nice to myself? Sometimes am I too hard on myself? It's a balance. Cut yourself some slack, be compassionate to yourself, be nice to yourself, but then it's okay to hold yourself accountable and be like, you did say you were gonna do that, let's do it. But it doesn't mean saying like, you're stupid, you didn't do it, right? It's let's do it. Some gentle persuasion. Carla's gonna work on keeping commitments to themselves. That way they keep my commitments to others. Yes, self-care 101. You can't care for others if you don't care for yourself, right? You can't pour from an empty cup, but you can refill your cup. So make sure you're taking time to refill your cup. Reggie is reframing negative self-talk and making myself one of my best friends. Yay, we love that. Pledge to be your own best friend. Pledge to be your number one homie, your number one supporter. Because at the end of the day, you always got you. So if anyone else wants to share any takeaways, or, feel free to unmute yourself, drop anything in the chat, or even just kind of take a moment and think to yourself, how do I feel today? Do a little self check-in, and what am I going to take away from this session? Anything else? Just including a few extra resources. So just so everybody knows, even if you aren't a member of Wellness and Recreation, we do have a brand new beautiful facility if you're in the Raleigh area, and we do have alumni memberships. And you're not going to get a gym less expensive than this gym. And this gym is like elite. It's beautiful. I mean, I'm biased because I work here, but trust me when I say it's gorgeous. But if you don't want to come to the gym, we do have WellRec at home. We do stream live virtual fitness. We have lots of different wellness related videos. You can also work with personal trainers and wellness coaches. There is a fee, but it's very reasonable if you are interested in doing that. I also included some links to some other really helpful things. So like I mentioned, Carol Dweck, she's kind of the mother of growth versus fixed mindset. James Clear's Atomic Habits is also phenomenal. And then we have some other stuff about habits and how they work. And then just some general things about goal setting. So maybe you have a goal to talk more positively to yourself. We put some links here as well for how do I set proper goals, and then how do I allow for some flexibility. And then also Mayo Clinic has a great resource for creating your wellness vision. So it allows you to kind of just take like an aerial perspective of the areas of your life where you maybe are not doing as great as you'd like. Maybe you want to focus on your occupational wellness, your purpose well-being a little bit more, or your physical well-being. So that can kind of help you to figure that out as well. We'll send a follow-up email, but this is my email in case you do have any questions. You'll receive these slides and resources, of course, later today, most likely, or tomorrow. So, but if you do just have any questions about any general health and well-being questions, if you're looking for any particular resources, you have questions about wellness and recreation, if you'd like a free 30-day trial to wellness and recreation, you can also email me and I can get that for you, no problem. But yeah, does anyone have any additional questions or comments?
Katie, there was one more question that just came in the chat about the 4 tenancy quiz.
I'm not sure if it is. I'm assuming it is. I haven't checked that link actually in a minute. My colleague put that one in. So I guess, Kimberly, you will find out for me. But I'll also include I have some additional worksheets and such that I think would be really helpful. So I'll send those along too. But of course, feel free to reach out if you have anything else.
Yes, and I will say I love Atomic Habits. I just finished it. We read it as a part of our book club within the Alumni Association. It was literally just our last book that we read, and it was phenomenal. So highly recommend James Clear. And thank you so much, Katie, for this great information on behalf of the Alumni Association and Wellness Recreation. Thank you everyone who joined us today and who is watching the recording, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.